My name is Caleb Monroe, and what happened to me on October 9th, 2017, shattered everything I thought I understood about life, death, and the world we live in. Back then, I lived in Reno, Nevada, and worked as a diesel mechanic for a trucking company off Route 395. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I had a fiancée, Maria, who worked nights at the hospital, and we shared a modest two-bedroom house with our pit bull, Max. I wasn't the religious type. I had grown up in church, sure. My mom made sure of that. But once I hit my 20s, I drifted. God became a background character in my life, someone I called out to when things hit the fan, but never someone I actually followed. Sundays were for catching up on rest, football, and beers in the garage, not Bible reading. My father, Richard, had passed a few years earlier, and my mom, Deborah, still prayed for me every night. I know because she told me constantly. I used to roll my eyes when she'd say things like, "I asked Jesus to watch over you." I thought she was being dramatic. That all changed the day I dropped dead at work. One minute I was working under a Peterbilt, adjusting a coolant hose, and the next thing I knew, everything started spinning. There was this pressure in my chest, like someone stuffed a cinder block inside me. I crawled out from under the rig, stood up, and then the world just disappeared. No warning, no goodbye, just black. No sound, no pain, just a silence deeper than anything I'd ever felt. And then light. Not just any light. This light was alive. It wasn't like staring at the sun. It wrapped around me. It filled me. I could feel it pulsing in every part of who I was. It was peace. Absolute, overwhelming, unspeakable peace. And then the voice came. It didn't echo, and it wasn't loud, but it went through me like wind through trees. Caleb. I knew that voice. I don't know how I knew, but I did. It was Jesus. I didn't need to see him to know it. Every fiber of me responded to him. I didn't feel judged or ashamed, just exposed. Like he saw all of me, the parts no one knew about, and loved me anyway. And then I did see him. Not like I expected. He wasn't floating in clouds or dressed in some glowing robe. He looked like a man, but more. His eyes held galaxies. His presence made me feel like a child and a warrior at the same time. He said, "You have been given a moment to see, to return, to warn." I didn't understand. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice didn't work, not in the way I was used to. We didn't need words. He knew what I was thinking. He pointed toward the light, and suddenly it shifted. I found myself standing in what looked like a city from the future. Skyscrapers rose high into a smoky sky. People moved like they were in a trance, all walking the same direction. And I noticed something, glowing symbols on their foreheads and right hands. Not tattoos. They were lit from beneath the skin, like tiny circuits. It wasn't forced. These people were proud to wear them. And then Jesus spoke again. It was delayed, but it has not been stopped. I turned to him, confused. What was delayed? And he said, the system, the deception, the ceiling. My mercy held it back. But the world desires it now. I saw flashes, like video clips playing in my mind. Protests, election rallies, political chaos. And then, I saw former President Trump, standing on a stage, waving, talking. Jesus said, his rise brought a pause. A delay. My people cried out, and I answered. But darkness regroups. I didn't know what to make of it. I'd voted for Trump, more out of habit than conviction. I wasn't political, but I knew things were messed up in the world. Jesus said, the world is shifting into place. The enemy is not idle. And my people sleep. Then I saw another image. People lined up to receive something. It looked like a medical injection, but as they received it, a dark mist seemed to wrap around them. They smiled. They thanked the workers. They thought they were being saved. But I saw what they couldn't. The spirit behind it. It was a bargain, a quiet surrender. I watched as men and women, young and old, willingly accepted something that claimed to offer safety, unity, healing. But in the spirit, chains snapped tight around their souls. It was the mark. Not just a physical thing, but a spiritual agreement. a signing away of their authority. And when they realized what they'd done, it was too late. I heard the screams, not from their mouths, but from their spirits. It was like a million people crying out from the inside, but no one on the outside could hear. I turned to Jesus and said, "How can I warn them? They won't believe me." He looked at me with such sorrow in his eyes. I thought my heart would break. "Warn them anyway," he said. "Some will listen, some won't. But they must be told. You are not the only one I have shown. The time is short." He reached out, and as soon as his hand touched my shoulder, everything fell away. I was yanked back like a rubber band snapping. My chest burned. My ears rang. Suddenly I was back, on the shop floor, gasping for air with EMTs all around me. One of them was shouting, "He's back! He's back!" They told me I'd been out for over 3 minutes. No pulse. Flatline. Dead. But I wasn't dead. I was here. And I remembered everything. I couldn't sleep for 3 days after it happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the people, those faces, those glowing marks, those eyes that had lost their light. I kept replaying the moment when Jesus said, "The enemy is not idle." That sentence echoed in my skull like a bell in an empty church. Maria thought I was having some sort of post-traumatic stress reaction. She didn't know what to do with me, and honestly, neither did I. I didn't tell her everything at first. How do you explain to someone that you died and saw Jesus, and he showed you the end of the world? That he told you the mark of the beast had been delayed, but it's still coming? That you saw people welcoming it, smiling as they sold their souls? She would have thought I lost my mind. But it wasn't just a vision. It was a knowing. It was like my soul had absorbed a truth too heavy for my body to carry. I walked around feeling like I was made of glass, fragile, on edge, seconds from cracking. My hands shook when I tried to eat. My appetite disappeared. At work, the sound of pneumatic tools and metal grinding against metal felt wrong, like I didn't belong there anymore. One afternoon, I locked myself in the supply closet and cried like a child. The weight of what I'd seen was unbearable. I begged God to take it from me. I told him I didn't want to be the one to carry this message. But his answer wasn't silence. It was a new vision. I wasn't asleep. I was wide awake, sitting on the floor of the bathroom in our house, staring at the tile. And then, just like before, the world around me shifted. I didn't leave my body this time, but my spirit was pulled out like a string unraveling from the inside. I was suddenly standing in a massive stadium, modern, high-tech, filled with thousands of people. But they weren't cheering for a sports team. They were listening to a man on stage who looked polished, sharp, charismatic. He spoke with fire in his voice. The people loved him. They clung to every word he said. Behind him, massive screens lit up with phrases like global unity, one world healing, and end of suffering. The crowd erupted in applause every time he said something, and I felt a chill run through me. He smiled like a savior, but behind his smile I saw a shadow that pulsed with something dark. It wasn't obvious, not to them, but I saw it. His words were poison honey. Then I looked around, and that's when I saw what chilled me to my bones. Many in the crowd were believers, people I recognized from back home. My uncle, a friend from high school who used to lead worship, even my old youth pastor. They were all there, hands raised, eyes glowing, worshiping this man. I screamed at them. I shouted, "Don't you see? That's not who you think it is." But they couldn't hear me. I was invisible. I saw some who were hesitant, people holding back near the edges of the crowd. They looked nervous, unsure. But they were few, very few. The majority were all in. Jesus appeared beside me again, and I said, "Why are your people here?" And he looked at me and said, "Because they stopped watching. They stopped listening. They traded discernment for comfort." I asked him, "But weren't they saved?" His eyes grew sorrowful. "They loved the idea of me," he said, "but they did not know me." That broke me. I dropped to my knees and sobbed until I felt like I would throw up. And then Jesus knelt beside me and said something I'll never forget. "Caleb, this is not to scare you. It is to awaken you. There is still time for some. But that time is short. The stadium faded, and I was back in the bathroom, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I didn't tell Maria that vision either. Not yet. But I started reading the Bible again. Not casually, desperately. I devoured the book of Revelation. I didn't understand all of it, but pieces began to click. The beast, the mark, the false prophet, the signs. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't some spiritual metaphor. It was real, and it was coming. I started fasting. I started praying. I started asking God why me. Why he showed me this. Why someone like me, a guy who used to fall asleep during sermons, was now carrying this unbearable weight. And slowly, I started to realize the truth. It wasn't because I was special. It was because I was willing. Because he knew I wouldn't be able to forget what I saw. Because he knew I would speak. Even if my voice trembled. Even if people mocked me. Even if I lost everything. I began to feel a holy fire rising in me. Not rage, not pride, but purpose. A sense that I was born for this. Not for the shop. Not for a quiet life of bills and barbecues. But to warn. To speak. To prepare. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I had to tell Maria. I had to tell my mom. I had to start speaking before the vision became reality. Telling Maria was the hardest thing I'd ever done. She came home from a long night shift at the hospital, exhausted, her scrubs wrinkled, hair tied back in a loose bun. I was sitting at the kitchen table, Bible open in front of me, barely touched eggs turning cold on the plate. She gave me this look, tired, confused, slightly annoyed, like she wasn't in the mood for whatever I was about to bring up. And I didn't blame her, but I couldn't wait any longer. Maria, I said, I need to tell you what happened to me. She sat across from me, nursing her coffee, and I spilled everything. The collapse at the shop, the light, Jesus, the visions, the stadium, the people taking the mark, what he said about the delay, about the deception, about how even believers were being swept up in it. I didn't sugarcoat it. I couldn't. The words poured out of me like a flood breaking through a dam. I cried more than once as I told her. Her face went blank. She didn't interrupt. She didn't touch her coffee. When I finally finished, she sat in silence for what felt like a lifetime. And then she said, quietly, Caleb, do you think maybe this was just trauma? That your brain made this up because you died for a few minutes? I wanted to scream. Not at her, but at the world. At the spiritual deafness that settled over people like a fog. No, I told her. This wasn't a dream. I didn't imagine this. I know what I saw. She nodded slowly, but I could see it in her eyes. Doubt. Fear. Disbelief. And I couldn't blame her. This kind of thing doesn't fit into normal life. It breaks everything. For a while, she avoided the topic altogether. She stopped asking how I was doing. She started sleeping on the couch after night shifts. And deep down, I knew why. I wasn't the man she fell in love with anymore. I had changed. Not because I wanted to, but because God changed me. I lost friends too. When I finally worked up the nerve to tell some guys at work what I'd experienced, they laughed. One of them, Brett, slapped me on the back and said, Dang, Caleb, didn't know you were a preacher now. Another just shook his head and said, Too much diesel fumes, man. Even my mom, bless her soul, was cautious. She believed me, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't fully grasp the weight of it. She kept saying things like, God gave you a dream for a reason. But this wasn't just a dream. It was a warning, a commission. I knew I had to do more. So I started going to local churches, asking if I could share my testimony. Most of them said no. One pastor told me flat out, We don't preach fear here. Fear? This wasn't about fear, it was about truth. The truth that time was short. That the enemy was laying his pieces on the board and most of the world was too busy scrolling and streaming and numbing themselves to see it. That same week, I had another vision. This one was shorter, but just as intense. I was lying in bed, not asleep, just staring at the ceiling fan. And then suddenly, I was standing in front of a massive gate, dark, ancient, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. Behind it, I could hear millions of voices whispering all at once, like a chorus of wind blowing through dry leaves. Then I saw a figure approach the gate. He wasn't human. He looked like light and shadow twisted into one, and his eyes burned with hatred. He didn't speak, but I understood him. He was waiting for permission, for access, for the last lock to click open. And Jesus appeared again, this time more radiant than I'd ever seen him. He stood between me and that gate, and without looking back at me, he said, "When the final trumpet sounds, there will be no turning back. The gate will open, and the deceiver will be revealed in full." My knees buckled. My stomach churned. Jesus turned to me then, his face full of urgency. "You must warn the sleeping ones. Those who still have oil in their lamps must awaken the others. Time is vapor." Then, just as suddenly, I was back in my bed, soaked in sweat, staring at the ceiling like nothing had happened. But everything had. I got up, walked to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the man staring back. My eyes looked older. My face looked worn, like I'd aged 10 years in a month. But there was also something else, fire. Not the kind you see, the kind you feel. I realized that night. I couldn't keep chasing people to believe me. I had to just speak. Whoever had ears to hear, they would hear. The rest, God would have to deal with them. So I started filming. Just my phone, nothing fancy. No editing, no flashy graphics. Just me, telling the truth. I uploaded the first video at 3:14 in the morning. I didn't care if anyone watched. I just had to obey. That was the beginning of everything. The first video barely got 10 views. A week later, it hit 100, then 1,000. Before I knew it, I was getting messages from people all over the country, some from Canada, even a few from Europe. Not all of them believed me. A lot called me a lunatic, a conspiracy theorist, a religious nut. But others said they'd been having dreams, that they'd seen similar visions, that they felt the same urgency in their spirit but didn't have the words until they heard mine. One man wrote me a message I'll never forget. His name was Joel from Oklahoma. He said, "I was about to get a certain implant in my hand last month. It was marketed as a workplace convenience thing. Lets you scan into buildings, start your car, store your ID. But something about it felt off. And when I heard your video, I cried. I knew that was my warning. That one message made all the rejection worth it. I started fasting more, praying with purpose, spending more time in the Word than ever before. I shut off Netflix, deleted most of my social media, stopped wasting time. The more I pressed into God, the clearer His voice became. He started showing me things in dreams, cities underwater, flags falling, men in suits shaking hands behind closed doors while demons stood beside them laughing. And always the people, thousands, millions, walking towards something that felt good, looked good, sounded good, but was leading them to destruction. One night, I saw fire raining from the sky over what looked like New York City. But it wasn't nuclear. It was judgment. And people screamed, not because of the flames, but because the truth had finally hit them. The lies were peeled back. They saw it for what it was, but it was too late. And through all the chaos, I heard the same phrase again and again. They welcomed the beast. I would wake up shaking, crying. Sometimes I'd have to fall on my face and just beg God for strength to keep going. Because this calling, it's heavy. People think hearing from God is a glamorous thing. They think it makes you feel special. But let me tell you something. When the Almighty shows you the destruction coming to this world, it wrecks you. It humbles you to the dirt. You don't walk around feeling chosen. You walk around feeling burdened. Every face you pass at the grocery store becomes a soul you wonder about. Every friend you used to party with becomes a name you cry out to God for in the middle of the night. Because you saw what's coming. It's not science fiction. It's not symbolic. It's real. And it's near. Jesus didn't show me a vague metaphor. He showed me the timeline. We are standing at the door. And I know some of you don't want to believe that. Some of you would rather close this video and pretend it's all nonsense. That's fine. That's your choice. God gave you free will. But if you're still watching this far in, then maybe, just maybe, something in your soul knows I'm telling the truth. Maybe the Holy Spirit is tugging at your heart. Maybe He's been warning you already, and this is just the confirmation you needed. I'm not here to scare you. I'm not here to sell you something. I'm not a preacher, or a prophet, or a televangelist. I'm a mechanic from Reno who died and came back with a warning. A man who stood in the presence of the Son of God and saw what most people will never see until it's too late. And now I'm begging you, wake up. Get right with God. Repent. Seek Him while He still may be found. Because the deception is getting stronger. It's not coming in the form of pitchforks and red capes. It's coming in beauty, in progress, in unity, in safety. It will feel like peace. It will look like hope. And it will cost you everything. You need discernment now more than ever. Don't follow the crowds. Don't go along just because it's convenient. Jesus said the road is narrow, and few find it. If that scares you, good. Let it shake you. Let it drive you to your knees. Because that's where the real journey begins, at the feet of Jesus. And if you don't know Him yet, you can. You don't need a church building. You don't need a priest. You need a broken heart and a willing soul. Call out to Him. Tell Him you want to know Him. Ask for forgiveness. Ask for eyes to see. And He will answer, just like He did for me. Just like He's doing for thousands across this world right now. There's still time, but not much. He's coming. And when He does, the gate will open. The line will be drawn. And the time for choosing will be over. You don't want to be on the wrong side of that line. You don't want to be one of the ones who welcomed the beast with open arms and only realized it when it was too late. So please, while you still can, choose Jesus. Choose truth. Choose life. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it go quiet. Share this video with someone. Anyone. You never know who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more testimonies like this, and more warnings from others who've seen what's coming. This isn't entertainment. This is eternity. God bless you, and may you be found ready.